Making headlines tonight, Prime Minister Mia Motley reshuffles the cabinet. Barbadians told to make preparations as Tropical Storm Gonzalo approaches the region. An integrated regional logistics hub launched at the port. And coming up in sports, Windies coach Roddy Estwick gives assurance the bowlers will be ready for the decisive test.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC Newsnight, starting now.
I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. 2 years and 2 months after her Barbados Labour Party took office in a now historic general election, Prime Minister Mia Motley today made the first major changes to her cabinet with a reshuffle. But it was a reshuffle with a difference, as the Prime Minister also announced that Parliament will be prorogued on August 8th, with a new throne speech to be delivered on September 15th. In her national address this evening, Prime Minister Motley said after Barbadians gave her government an overwhelming vote of confidence in May 2018, she promised them the BLP would remain responsive to their needs. As such, she says the throne speech in September will signal a new direction and a fresh guard being taken by her government.
With respect to the positions, clearly I will remain as Minister of Economic Affairs, Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment. The Honourable Dale Marshall, QC, remains as the Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs with responsibility for police still. The Honourable Santia Bradshaw remains as Minister of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, as she was. Senator the Honourable Dr. Jerome Walcott remains Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostic, Minister of Health and Wellness, he remains. The Honourable William Duguid shall now become Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. The Honourable Ronald Toppin remains Minister of Industry and International Business. The Honourable Kerry Simmons will now become Minister of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. The Honourable Cynthia Ford remains as Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs. I've invited Senator Lisa Cummins to become Minister of Tourism and International Transport. And I've also invited the Honourable Ian Goodin-Edgell to become Minister of Transport, Works and Water Resources. The Honourable Adrian Ford becomes Minister of the Environment and National Beautification. The Honourable Wilfred Abrams becomes the Minister of Home Affairs, Information and Public Affairs. The Honourable Ryan Strawn remains as Minister in the Ministry of Finance, and the Honourable Marcia Cadell remains Minister in the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Investment. The Honourable Sandra Husbands, Minister in the Ministry of Foreign Trade, as she was. The Honourable Colin Jordan remains as Minister of Labour and Social Partnership Relations and the Third Sector. The Honourable Charles Griffith will now move as Minister to be the Minister in the Ministry of Water Resources. The Honourable Dwight Sutherland will become the Minister of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment. The Honourable Kirk Humphrey remains as Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy. The Honourable Indar Ware remains Minister of Agriculture and Food Security. The Honourable Peter Phillips goes as Minister in the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. And the Honourable John King becomes Minister in the Prime Minister's Office, with Culture coming to the Prime Minister's Office and Rural Development Commission, with an intention that, as we know, the Rural Development Commission and the Urban Development Commission moving to become a National Development Commission and bringing both of those entities together as one, as we had discussed previously. The Honourable Senator Romel Springer is Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. And of course, Senator Kay McConney remains Minister of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology. Fellow Barbadians, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to thank the Honourable George Payne, the Honourable Edmund Hinkson, the Honourable Trevor Prescott, the Honourable Neil Rowe, and the Honourable Senator Lucille Moore for their contributions over the course of the past 2 years and to the cause which we have been fighting for. This is not a case of dismissing anyone. I want to make it clear that I'm committed to ensuring that each former member of the Cabinet is utilised in this country in a manner or in the furtherance of the work of this government and of this nation. They are all capable individuals who have much to offer Barbados.
Well, political scientist Peter Wickham joins us live now. Peter, I know it's just about 1 hour after all these developments and it's still fresh and everything has to sink in and think about it. What's your initial thoughts on the changes?
Yeah, my initial thoughts is that it's halftime. You know, we're looking at a situation where September this year is going to be the halfway point in terms of the journey of the administration. And there are also some additional factors now. The COVID has created renewed exigencies as far as the economy is concerned. And it's fairly clear that the Prime Minister has thought it appropriate to respond to all of these. And that seems quite reasonable.
Okay, any of the changes jump out at you, or what do you think is most significant?
Yeah, well, I think the most significant thing is that she has slashed the cabinet. I mean, she's taken out 5 ministers. Additionally, she's added 2, but you're still looking at her net reduction of 3. 3 people going from any cabinet is significant in the scheme of things. So one could argue that the most significant thing is that she's responded to the need for a greater economy and that she's reduced the size of her cabinet. The other thing I think is significant is that clearly she feels more comfortable politically. Because I would have commented when we started this journey that, you know, with a small backbench or with a large backbench, she could become vulnerable. Clearly, she does not see the concern for any of those vulnerabilities anymore. So as a result, she has moved some of her members onto the backbench in terms of allocating resources accordingly.
Okay, Peter, a lot of the language that the Prime Minister used was looking at the situation of where Barbados is now and what's happening and changing the cabinet to reflect that. So do you see the cabinet now, this new cabinet, does it reflect what Barbados needs to do going forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting things. If you look at the inclusions, Senator Cummins, she did extremely well during the COVID regarding the port. The port, I think, was a standout type of institution in terms of the way it responded to the crisis. We were able to generate some important revenue by the home porting and relocating people through the airport. And Senator Cummins was central to that. Clearly, she's being rewarded. Then we look at the transport board, you know, with the arrival of 33 electric buses, one could argue that the transport board's fortunes have been turned around. So the fact that those resources are being brought on board would suggest that she's responding to some clear realities. And then we look at the situation with the St. John MP. St. John is having challenges with water, and he has been dropped directly into the Water Resources Ministry, dealing with the Barbados Water Authority. So perhaps he's in a better position now to respond to the demands of his constituents that have been increasing. So when I see that kind of response, it says to me that there's clearly a strategic effort being made to deal with the resources in the way that she would want to deal with the resources. Some of the other ones who have been cut, one could argue that there is really no huge political liability associated with some of those people. You have people who are either looking at retirement relatively imminently, or alternatively people like Edmund Hinkson, who is, one could argue, be young enough that he can be reborn in a future cabinet in the way that Liz Thompson was.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter, for bringing all that into context for us.
My pleasure. Okay.
Complete your storm preparations. That's the word tonight from the Department of Emergency Management. It comes as Tropical Storm Gonzalo approaches over the next 2 days. Barbadians are also being told to brace for the possibility of a tropical storm watch. Weather presenter Selma Green joins us live now. Selma, what's the latest position of Gonzalo and what threat does it pose at this stage?
Well, at the moment, the system is in the Atlantic. The coordinates 9.9 degrees north, 45 degrees west, or about a little over 1,000 miles to the east of Barbados. It's now packing winds of 50 miles per hour, moving directly westwards at about 14 miles per hour. And on its present trajectory, we're expecting that that system will be passing to the south of Barbados sometime after midnight on Friday into the early hours on Saturday morning. It's a pretty small system at the moment, and it's quite a distance away, so the Met Office will be monitoring this system very closely. By tomorrow, as it moves closer to the area, we will be able to give more definitive information with regard to this particular system. And of course, by tomorrow, there's a possibility that a tropical storm watch will be issued for Barbados. But at the moment, the center is expected to pass north of us. There is a possibility that after midnight, we will be experiencing tropical storm force winds. and also likely that we will get between 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. But at the moment, the outer bands of that system extends for about 35 miles, and it is going to be passing about 90 miles to the south of us. So we will be monitoring it closely, and of course, we will bring you more information on this system a little later on in the weather news, so please stay tuned for that.
Okay, thanks, Selma. We'll see you then. Well, just about the time that COVID-19 cases were beginning to be discovered in the Caribbean, cruise lines voluntarily suspended cruise ship operations from U.S. ports of call. Now, over 4 months and 2 no-sail extensions later, ships are still not sailing, and they won't until the end of September at the earliest. This afternoon, the Caribbean Tourism Organization hosted a virtual discussion on the role of the cruise lines in Caribbean travel in light of COVID-19. Carnival Corporation's Vice President of Caribbean Government Relations, Marie McKenzie, says they will be retiring 13 ships. She says Carnival has had to make drastic changes.
Typically, over time, we have retired or, sold about 2 ships per year on average. What we've decided during this time, which this pause allows us to do, is really take a pause, look at our business, look at our company, and revisit, the strategy that we had in place and determine what makes sense today, knowing that we cannot sail, knowing that we typically retire 2 ships per year. Do we then accelerate that? Okay, instead, because even restarting, we knew that some of these ships would probably be the last that we would start up in the initial start of business, and the cost to maintain these ships really don't make sense relative to the timing that we'd have them sitting there.
Meanwhile, Ms. McKenzie's counterpart at Royal Caribbean, Russell Benford, is positive about a strong return to business.
Our sales data shows that our consumers really want to come back, and I think for a lot of folks that are going through this for the last 4 months, people are looking forward to getting back to life as normal. And certainly our future cruise bookings are strong. Some people may have noticed in the media that we recently completed the acquisition of Silversea Cruises. So, we actually have used this time to complete the purchase of we added a brand to our portfolio, while at the same time, Pullman Tour Cruises is no longer a part of the portfolio. So we are investing, and we feel like the future growth trends that we're seeing are really, really strong.
Barbados is set to play a key role in the regional fight against COVID-19. It is now home to an integrated regional logistics hub, which was launched at the Bridgetown port this morning. Lorna Jones has more.
As part of the region's collective COVID-19 response, SEDIMA has established an integrated regional logistics hub in Barbados.
It will act as a primary repository and transshipment point for COVID-19 related relief supplies and also aid the coordination of humanitarian logistics. The hub will also facilitate logistical planning throughout all stages of the humanitarian supply chain. And the 2 main components are located here at the Barbados Port Inc. and the Grant Lee Adams International Airport.
Acting Executive Director of SEDIMA, Elizabeth Riley, was speaking as the hub was launched at the Bridgetown port. One of the partners in the venture is the Government of Canada.
We must, of course, recognize the role of the Government of Canada, which has reallocated from the targeted support to SEDIMA project Canadian $401,359 towards the establishment and operations of the hub. And this will further assist in securing personal protective equipment and other medical supplies to our frontline workers.
Another key partner in the establishment of the hub is the Caribbean Development Bank. President Dr. Warren Smith revealed the bank has funded the purchase of personal protective equipment, or PPEs, which will be available to all borrowing member countries and distributed through the hub.
Over 250,000 protective gloves, 160,000 masks, 110,000 gowns, 67,000 goggles, and 35,000 protective suits. We expect that most of the PPP will have been delivered to the beneficiary countries by the end of this month.
Dr. Smith says supporting member countries through these uncertain times remains high on the bank's development agenda. Meanwhile, Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy, Kirk Humphrey, says the port's new role as the integrated logistics hub is timely as the entity continues its efforts to become more efficient.
A few years ago, in June 2018, we received an audit by the International Maritime Organization that said Barbados fell down in 23 areas. We are working steadfastly to reverse that trend and to make sure that the next time we are audited, Barbados does not fall down in a single area. That is why very soon we will be taking to Cabinet and hopefully to Parliament a new merchant shipping legislation that speaks to the international responsibilities that we have and the way we intend to satisfy them and take advantage of these opportunities.
The hub will be available throughout the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season and possibly beyond as a legacy facility. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
3 people will be released from the Harrison Point St. Lucie isolation facility today after recovering from COVID-19. Meanwhile, the 136 tests done by the Best of Santos Public Health Laboratory yesterday were all negative for the viral illness. 76 of these related to passengers arriving on commercial flights. With the latest recoveries, the numbers in isolation are reduced to 5. Barbados' tally of cases remains at 106, 58 females and 48 males. 94 people have recovered and 7 have succumbed to the disease. The Public Health Laboratory has completed 9,884 tests. Remote working is on the rise, and Barbados, through its Welcome Stamp program, is capitalizing on this. Minister of Innovation, Science and Smart Technology, Senator Kay McConney, says there's a class of workers dubbed digital nomads who she says prefer to work as they travel. She says the internet has made work global in many ways. Senator McConney, the acting leader of government business, led off debate on the Remote Employment Bill 2020 in the Senate.
Some of these workers are like programmers and developing applications and social media, and there's a whole range and list of jobs that fall into these digital nomads class. I shared all of this as background to the remote work bill, sir, to say that what Barbados is seeking to do here is very much on trend with the culture of work and the way in which labor is now moving globally.
Senator McConney acknowledged there are negatives and positives along with risks, but she notes Barbados has a strategic choice to make.
Barbados has made a strategic choice when it comes to this particular bill. We can choose to avoid whatever action to which we think a risk attends. That is that we just don't take action at all in that particular area in some ways. We can mitigate it where we accept the risk, but we put certain things in place to mitigate its impact. We can transfer that risk, let somebody else deal with the risk. We can share that risk where we can include others in helping us to manage the impacts of those risks, etc. So there are many strategic responses, and these are just some that we can make to risk in any situation.
The Barbados Welcome Stamp program has the full backing of Deputy President of the Senate, Rudolph Greenidge. He is telling Barbadians there is no need for suspicion or fear, as the remote workers are not coming to take their jobs. He insists remote employment is here to stay, and participants in the Welcome Stamp will be making a contribution to the economy. Senator Greenidge had a message for those who oppose the program.
Any opposition to an idea such as this one can only be opposition for opposition's sake. Can only be opposition for opposition's sake. But politics being what it is, you know, sir, it wouldn't surprise me. Anybody who loves Barbados, anyone who loves Barbados, be it somebody from Solutions Barbados, somebody from the PDP, the DLP, the UPP, wherever you come from, anybody that loves Barbados should support this measure.
While Opposition Senator Caswell Franklin does not oppose the concept of the Remote Employment Bill, he raised his concern about it after hearing about the initiative from the international press. He agrees the country has to move fast before others with similar programs take flight. Senator Franklin drew comparison to Bermuda's program and the price charged to acquire the remote visa. He doesn't want Barbados to outprice itself against the competition.
Barbados has set a price on the certificate as $4,000, and if it's a family, $6,000. Bermuda has priced their certificate as $263, but Bermuda dollar is equivalent to a US dollar, so it's 263 US dollars for all intents and purposes. Now, if I had the option of coming to Bermuda or Barbados, and I had to pay $4,000 or $200, I might be tempted, because Bermuda is still a paradise too.
Coming up, Paho sounds a warning. Then a bit later in sports, we hear the Windies bowlers are ready for the third test. But before we get to all of that, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Before the arrival of a hurricane, householders should clear their yards of all loose objects, which may become dangerous missiles during the hurricane. Cooperators General Insurance, helping you to be prepared this hurricane season.
Checking in with our regional neighbors now. The Pan American Health Organization is sounding a warning to countries in the Americas reopening to attract key tourism income. It should be done gradually, and testing before travel could create a false sense of security. Director Dr. Carissa Etienne advised countries to use timely and accurate data to guide their actions as the coronavirus pandemic is showing no signs of slowing down in the Americas.
Analyzing this data in real time will help leaders determine whether it is safe to consider reopening, or if it's more important than ever to boost hospital capacity and implement the public health measures that we know save lives. It is through better, more detailed data that we have learned that some people are more prone to get sick from COVID-19 than others.
Dr. Etienne notes with the surge in COVID-19 patients, many health systems in the region lack the staff, space, and supplies to adequately offer routine care.
Such disruptions have delayed treatments for cancer patients and dialysis for those with chronic kidney diseases. People with diabetes are running out of insulin, and HIV patients have to worry about continuing their treatment.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez says states of the Caribbean should not be excluded from global assistance at this time. He wants the international multilateral response extended to middle-income countries.
Building back better requires transforming the development model of Latin America and the Caribbean. In a region where inequality has become untenable, it means developing comprehensive welfare systems that are accessible to all. It means creating a fair taxation system, promoting decent jobs, strengthening environmental sustainability, and reinforcing social protection mechanisms. It means regional economic integration. And it means women participating full and safely in public and economic life. Finally, building back better demands strengthening democratic governance, human rights protection, and the rule of law, in line with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
Mr. Gutierrez adds the Latin America and Caribbean region has become a hotspot for COVID-19, with the most vulnerable once again hard hit.